Paddock is a training and exercise space for sport education and performance. Each week, we look to grow ideas and innovation through conversation from beautiful Auckland, New Zealand. Hey, welcome to another week of the Paddock. Today we're going to be talking to Malachi Tulafono. He is a current student at the Manukau Institute of Technology School of Sport, looking to continue on the bachelor's degree of sports science. And the reason I'm going to be talking to Malachi today is not because he's a student. It's because he's really cool. Malachi, he's a basketball coach for the Franklin Bulls. He's also a development basketball player, I believe, at the moment still for the NBL basketball team, which is Franklin Bulls. And you're studying sports science. And but the topic today is not necessarily going to be basketball. It's not going to be necessarily the coaching. It's actually going to be about lifestyle change in regards to where physical activity and proper nutrition can come in from a young man's point of view, and how that knowledge of what a healthy lifestyle is, what is beneficial nutrition for developing athletes and youth, how he's gained that knowledge, how he sees himself, but also how he could also contribute with his knowledge and his experience to other young teenagers and young 20-somethings that are in the hype of their development, both in their physical activity and in their sports. Malachi, welcome on board. Thanks for taking the courage to be on the podcast this week.
It's all good. Thanks for having me, friend. It's pretty cool.
Give us a little bit of your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am half Pacifica, half Kiwi. To be frank, I've played basketball up to 4 to 5 years now. Started in high school, and it's just been full on ever since. Not much else about it. Yeah, it's basically basketball. Whether it's coaching, playing, all sorts.
It's really interesting that you introduce yourself as half Pacifica, half Kiwi. For our international listeners, what does Pacifica mean when we're in New Zealand, when we're Kiwis in New Zealand? When you say you're Pacifica, what does that mean? What does that represent for you?
There's a general group of us, I would say. I'm not as strong tied to it, but I like to represent myself as Pacifica. I am Tokelauan, I should say, to be more general. Not a lot of people know what that is, but the islands of Tonga, Samoa, etc. That is the group of Pacificas that we generalize ourselves under. So yeah, to be more frank, I'm Tokelauan, half Tokelauan. Yeah.
Is that from mom or dad's side?
Dad's side.
Dad's side. Cool. So, to be Pacifica, how does that impact you from the sporting context? I mean, when we look at New Zealand sporting teams, we always look at them as strongly with a strong Pacifica representation on them. What does that mean to you from the sporting sense, being Pacifica?
Well, it's obviously good to represent, where you're from. Not a lot of Tokelauan players that I see around a lot. There's very few of us. It's found that Pacifica generally quite athletic. We do pride ourselves on our athletic ability. I've always been told I should go into rugby, but I found a love for basketball and have gone through it. And I'm very happy to see other people as well throughout my career that have all joined in as well. Meeting the different Pacifica and how they view basketball, especially the Aucklanders. When they come over for the Bulls, it's always a new learning experience to see how others view it. But for me personally, I enjoy it that I'm representing a part of my culture.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. When we look at Pacifica athletes, we immediately have that thought that you're athletic. There's talent there. There's strength. There's fitness. All that's there. But the topic that brings us together for this podcast is, but that's the positive. That's the exciting part, right? But you've touched upon recently a topic about that there's also a side where it's hard to stay in that fitness space, to stay physically fit to be able to compete, and we've seen this throughout many Pacifica athletes. But you had an account that was that when I mentioned to you about doing the podcast, you were really explicit about, look, you know what, it's hard to change a little bit my own culture around my nutrition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Just the food obviously is always a big part in our Pacifica culture. We love food, seafood, especially as well. So it is always hard when you have foods like these that are just always there. It's not so much the type, but it's the quantity, the amount that is always there, I guess. That's a big part of the culture of food. But then also, I come from a very big family. So the amount of food, again, is there. And what type of food that can provide for everyone, that needs to be easily accessible and can cook, for the army. So obviously, yeah, it gets a bit tough, mostly around portion control. But yeah, there is some times where the type of food is a bit tough as well.
So at the end, you grow up with quantity, right? Mm-hmm. And there obviously there could be some nutritional choices that you do along the way. But despite that, and you have addressed this and what we've talked about before, that hey, you're a good athlete. You can go out on the court, you burn the calories, and in season you're doing well. You're actually doing real well. So will the nutrition actually matter for you?
Yeah, well, there is a whole thing. I mean, when I was obviously in high school, younger, I would eat all sorts of different things. I relied heavily on the amount of exercise I was doing to burn off that. But there's still the nutritional sense where you need to fuel your body with the right resources. I was constantly having to take supplements myself just to keep up to date. And I thought it was just because of all the exercise that I was doing, but later found out that honestly, I wasn't feeding my body with the proper fuel to carry on and do these exercises. I was heavy into the junk food, obviously, a lot of trans fat, so it just wasn't going my way. I've since then become more knowledgeable and understanding, so I don't take many more supplements anymore. But I've still, there's still food groups that need to be maybe more addressed and that I need to take a better care of.
This is really exciting to hear it from you. I have the fortune to be able to work with high school athletes in the rugby space, and obviously supplements, because they're gaining muscle, they need to get stronger, etc., is a big part of their fallback, right? Just like you're mentioning. But I know as a fact that Macca's is right around the corner. And for those in America, Macca's is actually McDonald's for us down here. And you went through that experience. With what you know now, and with what you've experienced over the past few years, and the knowledge, what can you tell high school students?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously in high school, it's obviously, like you said, it's real accessible. When you're with your friends and you think, what can we do? I mean, it's obviously that's the first thing you go to. And it was a kind of a tradition to always be there. But I just think that, especially for our athletes, but also even just the young population, just in general, that you got to start thinking about how can you fuel your body in the right way. What's how do I explain it? Kind of just what is the proper food that we need to be consuming? Because there is a proper food. The recommendation doesn't quite fit with an athlete's perspective, but becoming more knowledgeable can help you to heighten your ability and your athletic ability for your sport, but also just, keep going for a longer period of time.
So and this is the bit, because I mean you've said, look, I was able to burn off. I'm physically active. I go hard, so I can actually, I have talent, so I can actually disguise it. But do you feel that eating better now over time that you've learned this, actually, can you feel the difference that if you're eating better, getting better fuel into your body, that you're actually performing a bit better? Or is it the recovery? What is it for you? How are you experiencing it?
For me, it's the performance. It's definitely the performance. I'd always feel quite lethargic, very early fatigue when I'd go into exercise. And that was when I was, eating junk food, all sorts of stuff like that. As I've gone on and I've started eating proper food, that I know that I can plan ahead. If I know that I'm going to have a real busy training day, I'll plan ahead eating proper foods to fuel me up so I can perform. And then afterwards, post-training, taking care of the protein to get into my body so I can have recovery from my muscles. That's a real big key. I just feel like, performance-wise, definitely helps a lot, just to go on longer and be ready for the next day, I guess.
Cool. So actually, what you're, as an athlete, what you're thinking is planning to see what could keep you going longer at trainings and during your week, but recovery becomes a big part. Mm-hmm. Were you always conscious about recovery?
Not really. As a young athlete, you naturally can, recover quite fast. Yep. That doesn't necessarily mean that, you're always going to be like that. But as a young athlete, obviously, it's quite easy to recover from a lot of things. But as the time goes on, I would be training 6 to 7 times a week. I'd really be going hard, doing different things. Then you start to fall off. And I guess I didn't really think of it that much. A lot of stretching and stuff like that, I didn't even go into. But yeah, it's definitely something that I'm looking more into now, so that I can keep performing at a better ability and, just carry on from there.
What other changes have you incorporated, and at what stage of that behavioral change with regards to your preparation to compete or to train are you at the moment?
So I'm actually, I'll be going into week 4, I think, now of my plan. I've for a long time been stuck in the contemplation, been trying to think, I have to change. How do I do it? And I guess through my experience of just finding videos and thinking, I'll do that straight away, it's real easy for you to fall off. So having a structured plan, I guess, is the most important thing. And throughout this course, I've found out that, better ways to be more experienced for myself. I've thought out a plan of how do I, what's the proper foods that I can eat that fit with my schedule? When can I eat? Stuff like that. Does it fit under my calorie deficit for the activity that I'm doing as well? So I guess having a well thought out plan just makes it a whole lot easier. I can come home and I know exactly what's in the fridge, what's there for me, so that I don't find myself mindlessly eating and thinking, I can go over to Macca's or McDonald's for you American viewers, something like that. Yeah. I have something planned for me, and it makes it just that much more easier to stay on my diet, I guess.
Now, but again, you live with family. How do you manage that with regards to what family's doing?
Yeah, so I like to structure it that my breakfast and lunch are quite planned. I can do that myself. My family, we don't really eat together for breakfast and lunch.
Yep.
Dinners is the difference. Obviously, in this house, a lot of different people cook, and you don't really get to decide, I need this much protein, this much carbs, etc., etc. But you can have it in moderation. Obviously, if I'm having my protein and there's a whole bunch of sides that are obviously, whatever they may be, high in carbs and definitely junk food, you can obviously stay away from that. It's quite easy just to, boil some broccoli or something like that to have on the side. But it does get quite challenging, obviously, with a big family. Yep. Not a lot of people are in the same plan as me,
Yeah.
obviously. But obviously, you can find your places where you can plan it out. I guess that's my thing.
Have you been challenged by your own family at times around the structure that you're trying to give yourself your foods when it doesn't match what family's doing?
My family's quite helping in terms of they won't criticize me for what I do. They may eat certain foods around me that doesn't quite help, but they would never judge in that way. So I'm quite fortunate for that reason. They will always ask what I need from the store if they're going out shopping for me as well. So I mean there's definitely help from there, and it's made it that much easier to carry on.
So definitely that support network around family will help. But how do you that when your family is eating stuff that you're not supposed to, like those really potatoes and mayo, for example, in abundance, how do you control yourself? How do you create limits for yourself around that? Because this has been a conversation around that. Look, that's been difficult for you over time.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say finding something that can be just as distracting, but obviously good for you. Like a great well-seasoned chicken will look just as good as a baked potato if you're more concentrated on that. So just because you're in a diet doesn't mean that it has to be bland or anything like that. If you can have healthy food that can still be quite attractive, then obviously it makes it that much more easy.
Cool.
Easier.
So, but now, I mean, because you're still young, you're still competing, you're studying as well. How focused are you on your nutrition with everything else that you have going on in life? Has it become a central part, or not necessarily? It's something there that has to be good, but you still are working through it.
Well, as you get on, obviously, it gets quite busy. You're obviously doing a whole bunch of other stuff. I made sure at the start of my journey that I had to plan. My breakfast and lunch are quite similar, but there is a bit of differential. So it's not just, the same meal every single time.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm less bothered about, what am I going to have for this? What am I going to have for that? It just, I get home, I think, okay, I know what I have for lunch. There's this, that. It can be easy. It does get quite easy with the schedule I have in times where I'm actually quite busy and I don't think of food at all. I can go on for long periods of the day and it's just, I'm not hungry at this time, I won't eat. It's simple as that. I also track my calories as well. So I know, what I'm eating in a day. If I do have something bad in a day that's quite high in calories, then I can plan it for the next meal that I have to maybe be a bit less. So
how are you doing the calorie tracking yourself?
Simple app on the phone. There's so many of them, but I don't really. There's a whole bunch of things I do want to plan and stuff. It's purely just writing in your food that you're having and the amount, and then it'll be able to averagely calculate how many calories that is. I have a weight scale that I've got, so I can measure it properly, and it's just little things like that.
Yeah, there's a story about the weight scale, isn't there?
Is there?
Yeah. You had a story about the weight scale that you brought in a weight scale.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I didn't have a weight scale before. I didn't actually. So
it wasn't part of your family. It wasn't part of your family things, right?
Definitely not. We live in a family where it's just you do a bit of this, bit of that. Not much scaling goes into that. But I just thought to help make it a bit more accurate that I'd go out and I'd get myself one. No one knew what the heck it was. No one knew how it worked. But we haven't had that in our family before. Definitely a first for us. But it's helped me so much for my nutritional plan.
That's cool. So benefits that you're starting to see, or benefits that you're actually trying to get to with regards to focusing on your athletic performance, the benefits that you're focusing on in the long term by looking after and planning your nutrition. What would they be?
Well, I'm still learning as we go. Obviously, there's different things that I need to learn. As my work days go on, I'm feeling maybe there is a little bit more fatigue. Do I need to plan before to have a bit more maybe carbs or fats, depending how I want to go for fuel? As it goes on, it's getting a lot easier to measure. things. I don't need the scale as much because I know that this is the exact amount that I need. So it has been quite easy. Long term, my plan is just to stick with it in a calorie deficit. Obviously, if I do go out for a day to have Macca's, I can think of meals after that are quite easy. And it is getting to that point where I will have something and I can already plan ahead. Maybe I won't have as much of this and it'll still stay under my calorie deficit. But I try not to have, too many. Once you get one snack, you're bound to get some more. So I try to keep it as minimal as we can. Moderation is always the key for a lot of things. And it's just being a little bit less strict on myself. I'm allowed to have a bit of a break now and then, but still sticking to my plan as best I can. Long term, I just think that I want to get into the best shape I can. I've been back and forth for a while. Mentally, it's been tough just to think, well, should I even do it anymore? But I am quite serious in my basketball career, so I do want to get the best that I can out of it. And I think that this way is definitely helping me a lot, and I hope to carry on.
That's cool. So so that the basketball and the physical activity does play an important role of actually challenging you to stay alert with regards to your nutrition.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you had mentioned that your weight goes up and down a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I've always been like that, and it depends on obviously the season. I'm a real big thing on. I'll be doing a whole bunch of physical activity through the season, eating, whatever looks around, just mindlessly eating, because I'm working so hard. It obviously burns it out at counter exit, so it's quite nice. But as soon as I go out of that season and my physical activity drops, a whole bunch, I'm still doing that same eating. That's when I start going up and down, and I don't notice it till December comes around, and then it just goes back and forward, stuff like that.
So through experience and basically and just acknowledging what has happened with you throughout the years, even though you're still quite young, Malachi, what advice would you give? I'm thinking now, young high school athletes that are going into summer, which is the cozy off-season period, but suddenly in January, early February, they're hit with preseasons. Mm-hmm. If they haven't already started a preseason now, in early December, late November, what would you recommend? I mean, because you have that seasonal variation in regards to your habits. What would you recommend to high school students for them to actually be able to perform better with regards to their seasonal habits?
Right. Well, I'd say that obviously with the off season, a lot of people do get quite chill out, but I think my mentality has changed to think that it's not a time for resting. It's a time for recovery at the start and then build on before the season gets there. I think that's helped me want to stay active. So I'm not dropping off to a near zero when I would be working as hard. Having friends around is definitely a big help that also engage in the activity, makes it that much more appealing to do some physical activity with everyone. But just little things every day. Like I would go out for walks, golfing, stuff like that, which I normally wouldn't do when I was in high school. Right. But starting to just pick up some more just moderate physical activity at least, just to help out. Another thing I like to think of is that, the more physical activity you do, the more you can eat. I mean, that's always been appealing to me, So I try to get as much as I can, because then later on I can think, well, then you're going to deserve, as much as you can on your plate. And it kind of goes with that. Obviously, high schoolers, it's a bit hard. They may not be as dedicated to the sport as myself, but still just thinking, how can I make physical activity fun? I think is a kind of a key one. The more you can make it fun, the more you want to do it, then that'll help you out to burning the calories. Nutritionally, just, I guess, finding ways to make it simple. A lot of people think that it's quite hard to stay healthy. They find different things like, oh, you need to get this vegan burger with, that has no meat, But, if you take just a little bit of time to just actually look at the ingredients, stuff like that, you can plan a real easy meal that you can have done in no time at all,
Yeah.
I think that's something that we can kind of say to these younger kids, that it's actually quite easy, but how is kind of the big thing. I guess in high school, I was never told how. I just said, oh yeah, it's real easy. It's real easy. But, there wasn't any plan that I could follow. And I think that's a big thing that we can send to the younger generation.
And you have that possibility with your role, with your coaching roles. Do you have that? Do you see a space, a corner there to provide that how to do it to the young kids?
Physically, I try my hardest to, even for the younger age, I'll probably say like 14, under 14s. Like I'll even say, take care of your bodies, do this, do that, even some prevention stuff as well. Nutritionally, I'm hoping to start to bring in. We have Bulls Academy that we do, where they do look at other parts of sport.
Yep.
So I think maybe that could be a good time to go into nutrition and stuff like that, just so they're aware. I think is the kind of the big thing. Just trying to find different programs maybe that we can fit it in, that are a bit separate from just your skills of basketball, I think.
Yeah, again, and that's what makes a difference, and we're seeing it now. Well, you hear with the NFL players and the NBA players how they have all these side consultants that help them stay healthy and maintain their careers for a longer time. Probably Tom Brady being the case study for how long he has stayed in the game. But I've recently discovered as well through the work with professional soccer players in Latin America that many of them are retiring at between the age of 34 and 36. So their careers have extended to close to 16, 18 years. And they've been able to extend their careers because, and many of them that I talk to, they say, actually, we started worrying around the age 28, 29 of how we were looking after ourselves. And that's where we got those extra 8, 7 years of our career. But imagine how healthy you could stay if you actually are like yourself. You become aware much earlier, and how you could extend that career and stay involved in that physical activity. Just to sign off, you're an athlete. You're aware of your nutrition. You're aware of how to recover and how to look after yourself. What one or two tips would you give young people with regards to becoming aware and trying to incorporate some kind of lifestyle change that can benefit them in the long term, whether it's through their sporting achievements or just in their long-term healthy benefits?
Well, I definitely say, well, we've got social media. You gotta start using it. I mean, there's so much stuff that we can find on social media. Not all of it is obviously correct, but that's why I recommend that you go through a whole bunch of videos. Like I've gone through a whole bunch of different resources, and then you can start finding out, what's the accurate kind of go from there. So I think definitely use your resources that you can find to be, more accurate with how you're going to approach it. I think is a big one. What else would I say? I'd kind of go on to, man.
You always refer to being active. You always refer to being active, and I know you've addressed it a few times from the point of view also of being Pacifica, and some of the lifestyle disease and illnesses that affect because of the lifestyle Pacifica population. So many times I know that we've commented and we've spoken about being active.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You got to understand the categories that you're in. Obviously a lot of people are more susceptible to different things. Understanding where you fit into it, whether it's your age, your gender, your ethnicity. Understanding these things can make it that much more easier to understand how you're going to go from then on. How can you sustain a healthy lifestyle so you can, like the other athletes, can perform for a long time. And I think that's quite a clear thing to look at. How can you change your lifestyle? That obviously it's quite hard. Different lifestyles are quite set on different things, but can you do it to a moderation that where you can, be more, how do I say, non-susceptible to different diseases and injuries, etc., stuff like that. I think it's quite important.
Yeah, I agree, and that's a cool thing about sport. And I think we were talking about it not too long ago about how sport gives us that space to deliver this message from a fun space, from a space where it's all positive. In the sporting sense, it's not the doctor or the hospital telling you this is going to be good for you or you need to do this because there's no way back now. We have that opportunity in yourself from your role as a young coach, but also as a player. Through your leadership as a player, you have that great opportunity from a fun space to influence other players or other youth coming up through the grades. What's the plans for next year, Malachi? What are you aiming at, both on the court and off the court?
On the court, just I gotta get into the team. That's the most important thing. Being a professional basketball player, that's my goal. It has been for the past couple of years now. Obviously, I'm quite young. I've still got a lot of time to work at, but definitely that's always the main goal on the court. Off the court, it's keeping in a athletic state, whether it's nutritional, but also recovery. I've had a lot of knee problems, ankle problems, so I'm working at trying to strengthen those so I prevent it. Having a lot of talk with my physio, personal trainers, how can I do that? And that's kind of what I focus on off the court as well, not just nutrition, but how can I support myself so I can carry on with physically as well. So stuff like that. That's my goals for next year.
Perfect. That sounds good. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week on the Paddock with a conversation around that lifestyle nutrition that actually supports an athlete, the importance of getting awareness of where you're at with your nutrition, where you can make changes. You mentioned you're for a long time in that contemplation stage, but you need to take that step to move forward and to get some actions in place. And that's the invitation. That's the invitation to our listeners. If you're working with youth athletes, or if you're a youth athlete yourself, become aware of what it is that you're doing around your lifestyle nutrition, how that's benefiting you or not benefiting you, or how you're actually working around those benefits or detriments of your lifestyle nutrition for the performance that you're having either on the field or on the court, depending on what your sporting endeavor is. So the invitation is be aware, think, and what Malachi has told us, start planning around what you're doing off the court or off the field to actually make it easier to reach those performance goals that you have. Malachi, thanks a lot. To all our listeners, like, subscribe, and do all that fun stuff that you do on a podcast, and also share with your mates. And if you know Malachi, give it a like as well, because he's on the show this week. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you all the following week. Take care, guys.